Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brendan Lewis, and today I'll be reviewing my internship experience. During my youth, I participated as a player in the OMHA for the Oshawa Minor Generals. And now, as a coach and a leader in the learning community, I started by completing the initial training program called Respect in Sports. I assisted with team practices while acting as a mentor to players, conducted informal interviews with coaches and OMHA admin staff, and recorded anecdotal data such as observations and conversations throughout my internship experience. The inquiry question that I chose to explore is, using Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, how does player development compare to student development from microsystem, mesosystem, and macrosystem perspectives? So I chose to look at the student and the player being the microsystem perspective, the team of the class being the mesosystem perspective, and lastly, the overarching system, whether it be the educational or sports institution, and acting as the macro system. So I've already discussed my learning goal, but my success criteria directly relate to the three different perspectives, being the micro, macro, and meso perspectives, comparing student to player development. After defining my learning goals and success criteria, I decided that I would use Kolb's experiential learning framework throughout my internship. I was able to use this model to define some of the concrete experiences I had, such as completing the initial training program, participating in AGM meetings, assisting with team practices, and interviewing coaches and OMHA staff. I was then able to reflect on these observations, such as how did the initial training program influence how I was going to lead my team practices. The active experimentation phase also allowed me to plan and try out some techniques, such as implementing scaffolding in practices or letting players co-create their own expectations and set behaviors that they would follow. Lastly, the abstract conceptualization phase really allowed me to conclude from the experience and determine that players need agency and autonomy to develop true meaningful learning experiences and development, and also that there was a significant movement to professionalize volunteer coaching, which I believe aligned with the OCT standards that we've learned about in the BEd program. Now, looking at some of the key insights that I've had, from a macro system level, we really see that the training that coaches receive really aligns with what we're being taught in the BEd program and aligns with OCT standards. In addition, the AGM meetings really reminded me how the governance is similar to different school board meetings. So we run a system that's based on democracy. We have a president leading the meetings, and members are able to vote on different motions. And then lastly, again, that shift in sports culture and seeing how it's being professionalized. Much of the research that I performed was highly relevant to student and player development on the micro and mesosystem levels. So in bold, these are some of the topics that I had researched, such as scaffolding, spiraling, co-creation, positive feedback, agency, and autonomy. Now, some examples which I specifically saw in my internship were scaffolding used in practice drills. So for example, the coach might decide to scaffold a drill where players are simply running through, say, a breakout formation, and as they continue to improve, the coach will increase the pressure put on the players. So they'll send one player in on the offense, then two, then three players to scaffold the experience, and they directly communicate to the players they're doing this to prevent them from being frustrated. Next, what we've seen is a spiraling technique used in some more progressive curriculum techniques. So this included going back to basics, where the coach might even just take away the pucks and circle back to some of the initial drills they learned early on in the season. At a team level, players are also able to co-create rules and expectations. So they would determine rules such as what happens if a player misses a practice. They determine that if a player misses a practice, they would also miss the upcoming game. And they would also develop punitive actions as a team. So if players are misbehaving, the whole team is going to perform that punitive action, such as skating drills. I observed that there was a much higher level of positive feedback than negative feedback from the coaches. And players were given the opportunities for agency and autonomy, and that really contributed to their development. So some examples included them voting in their own captains, and they had to have valid reasons for those decisions as a team. From a microsystem perspective, there was a much higher ratio of coaches to players during practices, and this facilitated immediate and descriptive feedback and contributed to positive player development. This allowed individual players to work within their zone of proximal development and prevent them from becoming frustrated during the practices and drills. There was also opportunities for assessment as learning, where coaches would individually talk to the players and have discussions such as how can they improve individually as players and what steps can they make to improve their overall development. In conclusion, there are many aspects of player and student development that are similar from micro, meso, and macro system perspectives. The professionalization of volunteer coaching and opportunities for players to develop agency and autonomy are key areas that contribute to successful and meaningful player development. Some future considerations would include how does competitive versus recreational sport affect player development, and also how does player or student age relate to this specific development. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thank you for your time.